Hello, my name is Brant. Last name is Hunt, Hunt. My YouTube channel is Discerning What is True. And what I'm going to do, since I have the holiday off today and have some sunlight and in a different room, that is, because it's been quite cold here in the south. And I've got a wood stove, which works out really well, but I prefer to be in a different area to be a little bit warmer. So what I'm going to do is read from a particular book called Redemption 4.5. This is a colossal book, I guess you call it. It has 682 pages. So I'm going to go ahead and start here at page 60. And the title is called Redemption. And here we go. Any reference or inclusion to scripture in the following pages is to show the reader the nexus or connection of the operation of commercial law from those times past up to today, to show that commercial law and the operations thereof is constantly and operates in all that you do. The following pages are writings and thoughts from one of the gentlemen who brought this concept to the forefront. Many of these writings contain biblical references which you may not have interpreted as he has done. The thoughts are extremely insightful, unusual, and deep, definitely meat and not for spiritual babes. It is suggested that you reference the followings with a Bible and read with a prayerful consideration, asking God or whoever you ask for discernment and understanding as you read through these writings as a point of reference. The deliverance from the power of alien domination and enjoyment of the resulting freedom, it involves the idea of restoration to one who possesses a more fundamental right or interest. The best example of redemption in the Old Testament was the deliverance of the children of Israel. And he puts down in brackets Americans from bondage, from the dominion of alien power of Egypt. And then he has the slash brackets again in Washington, D.C. This is based upon Zondervan's Pictorial Encyclopedia of the Bible. In the natural sense of deliverance, see Luke 2:24-21 of setting Israel free from the Roman yoke. The expanded Bond's expository, dictionary of the New Testament words. The commercial definition of redemption may be stated as this: the recognition and action taken to redeem the debtor and all the property pledged, to take control, to file notice, to lien all the property, to restore rights, titles, and interests in property, to sever the commercial bondage and acquire the standing and capacity to discharge all fine, fees, taxes, debts, and judgments of the debtor in all commercial matters to the U.S. bankruptcy, aka national emergency imposed upon the people without full disclosure or consent. So he goes on here, and let me explain to someone about this book. This is a combination of many different people came together to put this book together. So it's not an author that is a one author. It is a combination of others working together in putting this book together. So salvation from the states or circumstances that destroy the value of a human existence or human existence itself. The word redeemer, as in related terms to redeem or redemption, appears in the Bible some 130 times and are derived from two Hebrew words of PDH and G/L, thought used to describe divine activity as well. They arose in ordinary human affairs, and it is in this context in which they must first be understood. PDH is the most general of the two, with cognizance of relating meaning to AKK, ADIAN, Arabia, and Ethiopian. It belongs to the domain of commercial law and refers to the payment of equivalent for what is released or secured. The verb PDH, unlike G/L, indicates nothing about the relation of the agent to the object of redemption, which in the Bible is always a person or another living being. Its usage does not differ in cultic activities from that of a normal commercial transaction. In both cases, a person or animal is released in return for money or acceptance of replacement. Some examples are from Exodus chapter 13:13, 34-20, Leviticus 27:27, 1 Samuel 14:45, with Exodus 21:7-8 verses, Leviticus 19:20, and Job 6:23. The abbreviation of what we call GL is more restricted to uses and does not appear to have any cognizance in other Semitic languages. It is connected with family law and reflects the Israelite conception of the importance of preserving the solidarity of the clan. The GO apostasy EL Redeemer is the next of kin who acts to maintain the vitality of his extended family group by preventing any breaches from occurring in it. Thus, he acquires the alienated property of his kinsman. That is Leviticus 25:25, or purchases it when it is in danger of being lost to a stranger, based upon Jeremiah 32:6. Some of this comes from the Encyclopedia Judaea, 1972. Example of this with registration, as we would say, Social Security. Luke chapter 2:1. And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. This is based upon KJV version. Registered, as utilized currently, also means to submit information to a book. It also means to surrender title, i.e., the registration of your car, the right to vote, or compulsion to register for the military draft. Debtor/slaves on the plantation register. Sovereign free men do not. It doesn't say sovereign citizen, folks. It says sovereign free men do not. Though in some cases it is appropriate as sovereign to register your debtor. Next subject, obedience to God. Acts chapter 5:34-39. Then stood there up one in the council, a Pharisee named Gamaliel, a doctor of the law, and in reputation among all the people, and commanded to put the apostles forth a little space. And he said unto them, Ye men of Israel, take heed what you intend to do as touching these men. For before these days rose up Theudas, boasting himself to be somebody, to whom a number of men, about 400, joined together, who was slain, and all as many as obeyed him were scattered and brought to naught. After this man rose up, Judas of Galilee, in the days of the taxing, and drew away much people after him. He also perished, and all as many as obeyed him were dispersed. Now I say unto you, refrain from these men, and let them alone. For if this counsel, this work be of men, it would come to naught. But if it be of God, you cannot overthrow it. Lest haply you be found even to fight against God. The next particular word is subjection. This is based upon Romans chapter 13:1-2. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. For there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God. And they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. Keep in mind, as it is in our nature as men and Americans, to defend and resist. You must learn to agree with thy adversary. However, under the godly principle, you are to submit to God's authority, and the public servants are to submit to your authority. For the people are above the government. You serve your God or your belief structure, and the public servant is to serve you, his master, and that's the way it is, unless you contract with the government. The next section, present, P-R-E-sent, S-E-N-T. Romans 12:1-2. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be you transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So what he's explaining, we are to present ourselves, not be represented, or as more commonly seen, represented in court by an attorney who is there only to represent the corporate fiction in the administration unit, that is in the court, to administrate the bankruptcy and the pledges of the property to the state, and to compel, brackets would take, the revenue from the debtor slaves of the plantation. Next section, represent. Luke chapter 11, 46, 52. And he said, Woe unto you also, ye lawyers, for you lay men with burdens grievous to be borne, and you themselves touch not the burdens with one of your fingers. Woe unto you, lawyers, for you have taken away the key of knowledge. You enter not in yourselves, and them that were entering in you enter. So this pretty much, well, it speaks for itself, who lawyers are. Firstborn of God, firstborn of Egypt. When Moses led the Israelites, that is the government agencies, out of Egypt, it was done with the killing, execution by executive, of the firstborn of Egypt. In other words, under the execution of the law by the hand of the individual. The government was redeemed, but the individual were never redeemed. Now with the second contract, that is with the cross, the individual will be free or redeemed by his endorsement of the acceptance of the offer/contract, which is for both his and the government mutual benefit. The attorneys or legal profession took the industrial society into the bar and closed the door to the temple, not only barring themselves from entering, but barring and forbidding all those others to enter therein for redemption. This is based upon Luke chapters 11, 46 through 52. Continue on. Acceptance for value. Matthew chapter 5, 25 and 26. And acceptance for value simply means the principal aspect of redemption. Agree with thy adversary quickly, while thou art in the way or towards the court with him, lest at any time the adversary deliver thee to the judge, and the judge deliver thee to the officer, and thou be cast into prison. Verily I say unto thee, thou shalt by no means come out thence, till thou hast paid the uttermost farthings. This is the cornerstone. Excuse me. And continue to look on to Matthew chapter 27 through 11, and Luke 23, verses 13 through 43. This is the cornerstone of the concept. Read and understand this verse. Apply it to where we are today. Today's court system, as an example, only deals with two kinds of persons. Realize that a person is not a living being, okay? Creditors and debtors, masters and slaves. By accepting for value the presentment offered, we become the holders of it, and the roles being played out are immediately reversed. By agreeing, that is, you accepting with thy adversary, you remove the controversy. It is the controversy which brings life into action in the courts. No controversy, no need to have a judicial decision. Common law versus private law. To understand common law in its usage and application, we first need to realize it is a law by execution, or the law that was called the Mosaic law, that has evolved into the Roman civil law. The Roman civil law is the base for our present statute law that exists today. Therefore, the common law is the statute law by execution. It needs a public agreement. In other words, by execution, it needs a public agreement. That is in common/public use today. That carries a public liability. Again, in brackets, a tax collection for its uses. In our nation, we have both common stock/employees and preferred stock inalienable rights in order for the government to regulate its common stock, brackets with consumers. It has taken an assumed tax exemption/priority of the individuals, which are using the industrial goods and services of the nation. By partaking of the industrial products, there is a tax that must be collected in order to keep records and track of all the industrial energy uses. And all common stock/public funds have a public liability. As these funds represent the energy, that is the money that is the evidence of transfer of energy, that must be regulated. We voluntarily we volunteer to pay the taxes just by our use of industrial goods and services, which is why it is a voluntary tax system. So what he's saying here is simply is if you choose to take these industrial goods, instead of actually you creating your own products, you are actually volunteer to be a part of the tax system. If you do not use any of the industrial goods, then there are no taxes. In order to use industrial goods and services without the requirement of taxes, we must accept the charges and direct them back to the government, all 100%, and thereby we lend our tax exemption / priority to the government to discharge the public liability. This exchange gives us an employer status, not an employee, but an employer status, or inalienable rights, that is the preferred stock, which then allows us to enjoy all the goods and services at our will. The common law evolves from the Old Testament, and our private law / inalienable rights come from the New Testament, as the New Testament is the fulfillment of the law by operation. All public law is execution of law, or the Old Testament, and the New Testament is international law, but an individual can only fulfill it voluntarily by operation. The operation of law can only operate when no malice or vindictive harm is intended, and is based upon the conscience of those charged to uphold it. It is purely spiritual. To sum it up then, with common law rights, that is constitutional rights, we are considered by the IRS to be employees of the federal zone or non-resident alien. With our unalienable rights, we volunteer into the federal zone. With our priority exchange for the tax exemption, and therefore we are now the employer. So you see the changes of the hats here. Therefore, common law is unto death and cannot give eternal life, as it operates only by execution / death to transfer the energy through the principle. Private law, operation of law, is unto life, as it is done by acceptance, the acceptance of the charges of a contract. Through acceptance, public liability, again with brackets, execution is offset, giving life. It does not require the death of the principal to redeem. The energy is transferred not through the principal, but by the principal. Note, once you understand the full power of Calvary, that is acceptance for value of what Christ did on the cross for each of us, you will understand how our debt, sin creates debt, is paid in full. Defendant, all the time you have spent in your life researching and studying the law and the rules, etc., must be reformed and relegated to and for historical purposes only. If you do not do this, you will always be a defendant. From now on, when we are going to agree with our adversary quickly, based upon Matthew 5:25, the concept is new to us. It will take some time to understand. In the end, God's word and godly people always win. Theory of cognitive dissonance. Dissonance is lack of agreement, consistency, or harmony. In other words, it's discord. As computers go, the human brain is without parallel or parity when compared to even the most sophisticated man-made computer. Nevertheless, it is a computer, and like all computers, it can be programmed. There is a theory known as the theory of cognitive dissonance, called TDC, which holds that the mind involuntarily rejects information not in line with previous thoughts or inactions. And that's what it means. By V, as in Victor, Leon Festinger, Festinger, may have been the first person to document the law of cognitive dissonance, but he was certainly not the first to observe it. Since the most ancient times, mind controls have been enticing free people into servitude, that is, piping them on board, so to speak, by taking advantage of man's tendency to generate cognitive dissonance. In his book, A Theory of Cognitive Dissonance, in Stanford University Press, 1957, Festinger says that new events or new information creates unpleasantness or a dissonance with existing knowledge, opinion, or cognitive concerning behavior. When this happens, pressure naturally arises when the person to reduce the dissonance. not reconciling the new information with the old, but reducing the distance. So what is taking place here? People will say, for example, here's just a good example, saying, well, I don't believe what you're telling me because simply I was taught the history of the United States in school. And what you're trying to tell me simply is just it wasn't what we thought it was, what I was taught. So I can't handle that. So I have dissonance. So I basically deflect that, and I'm not going to allow that to be a part of my thought section. This is how it was revealed. B.L. Festinger further stated that the strength of the pressures to reduce the distance is a function of the magnitude of the dissonance. Dissonance acts in the same way as a state of drive, need, or tension. The greater the distance, the greater will be the intensity of the action to reduce the distance, and the greater the avoidance of situation that would increase the dissonance. A person can deal with the pressure generated by distance by changing the old behavior to harmonize with information. But if the person is too committed to the old behavior and way of thinking, he simply rejects the new information. A simple "I don't believe it" thought or word is the easy cop-out, or if you are unaware, you are unaware of being unaware. Let's go to the next section here called Kings. God made man, both king and priest, and said that man insisted on having an earthly king to rule them instead of depending on God's word to rule them was the same thing as rejecting God. It still is. It still is. Then all the elders of Israel came to Samuel. Make us a king to judge us like all the nations. And the Lord said, the people have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. Howbeit yet protest solemnly unto them, and show them the manner of the king that thou shalt reign over them. And Samuel told all the words of the Lord, this will be the manner of the kings that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen. And some shall run before his chariots. And he will take your daughters to be confectionaries, and to be cooks, and to be bakers. And you will take your fields, and your vineyards, and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. And he will take the tenth of your seed, and of your vineyards, and give to his officers and to his servants. He shall take the tenth of your sheep, and you shall be his servants. And you shall cry out in the day because of your king, which ye shall have chosen you, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. This is based upon 2 Samuel chapter 8, verses 11 through 18. If you deem a king and a priest, example, brackets, a secure party / creditor and sovereign, what need you to be ruled by tyrants, lying politicians, dictators, and presidents? Are you not free? Can you not take responsibility? Part of the reason why people are actually in the situation they are is simply they don't want to handle the responsibility and give that responsibility to the government. We will tax, this is a quote, we will tax, spend, and the voters will re-elect us, because they're too damn dumb to understand. Harry Hopkins, an advisor to former President Franklin Roosevelt. Yes, that's right. We tax his pay, tax his play, even tax his time of day. We tax his shirt, we tax his coat, tax his car, tax his boat, we tax his food and tax his drink, tax him good so he can't think. We tax his house, tax his chair. By taxing his comb, we tax his hair. By taking his pills, we tax his health. We tax on taxes. We steal his wealth. And when he's sick, we tax his bed. Tax him till he's good and dead. Then we'll place upon the tomb, taxes drove me to my tomb. It's all in capital letters. But after he's gone, we won't relax. We'll steal his kids home with an inheritance tax. The source is unknown. But that is quite true, isn't it? Think about it. Many of you have been taught that that's what's supposed to be, what a government's supposed to be about. Is it? Think about it. Don't you find it curious that the sole solution to politicians' remedy for every problem, for the most part of which they create, correct, is the raising of taxes? Never do they reduce the size of government. Never do they reduce their salaries. But at your cost, you pay for everything, and even that which they waste. Man/men. And looking at the word man and men, etc., as they were created in the image of God, a contract. This then shows that the man created was an industrial bond, which was created by the contract. The industrial bond is the image of industrial benefits for society. But when the deception took place, the system operators, that is, the attorneys, deceived the financial institutions into believing that the debt, the borrowed funds, that is, in brackets, municipal bonds, were what they needed, and thereby the debt money individuals were able to indebt all of society into believing the lie and thereby destroying the beneficiary public government. It no longer had the debt-free industrial bonds, that is, men were free, to operate for all of society's benefit. So what they did here, they created bonds. And those bonds were supposed to benefit us, all of us. But they deceived us, you see, by the attorneys and also deceived the financial institutions into believing that the debt, to borrow funds, were what they needed, and therefore the debt money individuals. Anyway, so then the industrial bonds were or are now based upon debt funds. That's what they are, municipal bonds, and therefore they are consuming all the energy, that is the funds, needed to keep our society operating. And that's true because these bonds, for example, the school bonds, is done, well, we're going to build these schools for now. We don't have the money. See, that's the problem. You see, that's a lie. They do have the money. But they burden you to pay the taxes. You see? They're deceivers. Or what they needed, and thereby the debt money were able to indebt all of society. And anyway, I've already read that. Then the industrial bonds are now based upon debt funds and municipal bonds. Therefore, they are consuming all the energy funds needed to keep our society up. In fact, what they're doing is they're not only taxing the parents, but they're also taxing for the future generations. That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing already. Because they take a 25-year bond or whatever, 30-year bond to build some type of thing like a school or whatever. Because they don't have the competency to save money. They don't save money in order to build a school, which is what most people would do in the past. I've been a part of this because simply in my own life, when I went to a church, I went to a particular church that chose to not to go in debt, but as they saved money, they bought certain things to build a building. But people say, well, that's kind of hard, isn't it? No, not when people give and operate and work together and give their energies and their manpower to do that. You could actually save quite a bit of money. But anyway, I'm just giving you an example of my past. So Genesis 6 is about the energy that was taken from the public government. It was to hold it and use it to run the industrial society. The flood of public funds has again covered the earth. It's time to charge back the debt. That is the energy, money by use of the public policy HJR 192. The ARK is the private government treasury. That is the Federal Reserve. That will act as a mediator to the public debt funds by private assignment or acceptance. Thereby, once again, the public government will hold the energy money for the industrial use. After the true energy was perverted, the perverted funds were only for personal gain of a select few and were immoral funds. Therefore, they cannot heal, but only destroy whoever took part of their use. So here's an example. Men. Industrial bonds, privately held and assigned to public government or republic use. Giants are the corporations formed by the attorneys or by the people that they induce, but either way, they are not held by debt-free funds and are consuming not only the owners, but also those who partake of their services or goods, as all corporations are held in bar by the legal society. Daughters, the lending institutions that are part of the corporate industrial system and obtain the assumed tax exemptions of those who use their services. Ground, industrial costs is equal. The contract accepting the cost and thereby the breath of life was established for the goods to be republicated. Woman was formed as a public bond and offset to the private bond. Garden of Eden. All industrial goods and government are created for the benefit of those who know how to regulate and operate the system by contract, or today the written word by operation of the law based upon New Testament. When the system is operating properly, it will benefit all individuals that is in the whole world. Concept of corporation. Corporations, being artificial and created by government, borrow from the government treasury, which holds the energy, but the government has both the corporate side for daily operation and the public person and the agency for enforcement of public policy / regulation and statutes. When a public regulation or policy or statute is offended, the agency must hold someone responsible with commercial charges to mend the offense, either by imprisonment or by allowing the offender to use the charges to purchase public goods and services. When the individual is held in prison, the charges are used by the public for public needs and public expansion. But the individual who holds the charge is held on account with no personal use. Once a corporation manufactures a product that is consumed by the public, i.e. the public goods and services that it has paid for, the public debt must be discharged by the HJR. HJR means House Joint Resolution -192. That's what it means. We'll read that a little later. And an equal exchange must take place. That's how you barter, to be honest with you. This is a good example of bartering. If I want to barter you for, I got some tomatoes here, and I want to barter for, 10 pounds of bologna, not bologna, but ham from your pig, then we can do that. If he doesn't agree with that, it'd be a different way of bartering. But this is how to exchange, getting something equal. This is how bartering works. Same thing. The individual must hold charges from an offense before he or she can exchange this for public goods and services. Without the charges from an offense, an individual must or can only exchange public debt, unredeemed public funds for public debt, which is against the public policy of HJR-12. An individual then can someday be held accountable for this offense, which will give him or her the charges required to discharge the public obligation within a limited scope, but only for the benefit of the public. Corporations need to take care of the inventory / stock. And then there's a parentheses, people. This accountability can come in the form of either illness or legal redress. This occurs when a corporation either allows a person to hold and consume the public liability, which prevents it from passing through to the government, which causes the pass over, okay? Or by holding the charges / energy back from the use and consumption of the industrial complex. You follow what I'm saying here? Okay, just revealing this to you guys, so this is key. I hope you understand what is going on here. As I continue on here live, let's continue on. When an individual does experience either medical or legal problems, the modern practice of either of these professions with their latest voodoo and chromium-plated theology practices can only treat the symptoms and not the real cause. If they were to treat the real cause, they would either bury or imprison their client. Because of their limited license, they are not allowed to attend to this primal concern, lest they attain a charge that must be addressed and created a repetitive cycle that can never end. This is one reason why there's no remedy in the public system, though we need it as it is, the one that must be regulated, the commercial transactions between individuals, that is men, and government. General information. Attorneys are limited. That is to say, they must stay within their industrial license because they cannot make commercial claims, as commercial claims are commercial / retail amounts covered by the truth and lending requirements that hold persons personable responsible. The administration license of an attorney in bar has no accountability, is thereby limited, and has no authority to convey title to anything. The only way that an attorney can enter the commerce zone is by assumed tax exemption of some individual, or if hired by some other individual, that is a man. Your UCC contract trust, that is a treasury account, is the insurance for the full retail amount because it is the principal and the source. A sufficient amount is your acceptance of whatever the bill happens to be, since whoever tells you how much the bill is, because the witness to the fact, the forebearer, who carries the burden of testimony by license. You bind that testimony by your acceptance. Your acceptance is the criminal charge, in fact. Acceptance of deficiency charges. The deficiency to prepay closing on escrow, the counter call is the exempt priority adjustment. The principal allows the agency to take the exempt priority to offset the deficiency or adjust the account to zero. In other words, the fiscal year and calendar year together make one whole year. Concept / suggestion requests the circuit court deputy to take the deficiency, that is a charge of action, and put it in the circuit court docket and call the calendar. Call the bailiff or broker in charge of the adjustment brackets to deliver the same to the principal requesting release of the commodity, putting the whole account into one account. Request the order of the court to be released to the principal. Public education versus the monetary system. A lot is being requested of the young individuals that are coming from my primary education system. They, the children, are being taught that they should go on and to attain a college education. But public education is just what it is, says. You are educated for use in the public system. And thereby you become accountable for public liability, that is the debts that the public money carries. Get it? That's the part of the contract with public education. That's what you do to your kids, folks. When are you going to wake up? It is so with the idea that with better public education, individuals will be better able to lead profitable lives by giving those tools that they need to make greater amounts of money. In turn, they will be able to attain the commercial products required to create a more comfortable life. Well, yeah, that sounds nice, but the problem simply is what's happening right now as our society becomes what I call deindustrialized. There are not going to be jobs for these people at all who have these educations, that is going to college, public education. So in reality, you're being fooled. And this is what people are not aware of. So let's continue. First, we must take a look at how public money affects what it does to an individual. Money is the evidence of a transfer of energy in commerce after the fact. So the commerce clause for the transfer has taken place before the actual event has happened. In other words, the public offer was made first, then the actual acceptance or need was exchanged. Because of this being the case, the individual who made the public offer thereby carried the public energy, that is a negative energy, within themselves. Then is in brackets speculation upon and acceptance, which may cause other problems that can be medical, legal, or personal in nature. This suggests that the more available the public funds are for our use, the more likely we are to have other problems in our lives. Interesting. We must remember that the true creation of money is by our endorsement, that is, our signature. Money created in any other method is by the acceptance of someone else's debt. Such a debt carries with it is a negative charge. And this negative charge must be decayed in our bodies, which causes us to age, etc. The negative side is the public liability. It can only be discharged by our acceptance and charging back. For example, in brackets, republic/revenue. Revenant. In other words, you have RE on both those prefixes there, public and venue. The public money back to the public for the public to use. If this is done, there's no longer a public liability and it will not carry the negative charge as before. And it states in Scripture to seek ye first the kingdom. wishes to find your own inheritance that was created at your birth, and thereby all other needs shall be taken care of. You see how we've been fooled? You see this? There's a maximum law that states or says the money of the sovereign is his credit. He is the wealth for which no substance on earth can establish a value for. This is what we're given, folks. This is why I put down they stole our inheritance. They did. They fooled us. I posted that today or yesterday. You first must attain your sovereignty. Not very many people are going to find their true sovereign rights, as they must learn to hold a criminal charge, and this is not publicly acceptable, as the public system cannot teach this. In other words, they don't teach you this stuff, folks. You gotta go out and get it. You must seek and do your own searching and not follow the government/leaders. As the system wants us to go along with their debt program of certitude and not to venture out on our own. This will label you as a undesirable, but it is people like yourself who lead and keep the public system in check. The public system is a necessary evil, and once the individual learns how to harness it for his or her benefit, the public liability shall no longer affect him or her. The public system is the system that we must live in, and it will provide us with all our needs. We must learn how to stop its uncontrollable liability by our acceptance and revenue done very simply. When you have a need to know, you will search it out, as it says, seek and you shall find. Therefore, when we accept more public education, it becomes a greater liability, it becomes a debt, and it becomes harder to attain our true liberty. It is a built-in factor that when we accept public degrees, we become liable for the public benefits. Should we attain a public education, we need to keep private values that allows us to use the public education to enhance our ability to benefit the public and ourselves. Continue. Once we have learned to read, write, and use math, research, and investigate, we can educate ourselves. In other words, those are the basics. This is the, what's the word I want to say? Not grounded. Foundation. It's our foundation. But there are certain parts of the public education that can be used to benefit us beyond such basic instructional needs, such as vocational technical schools. Yeah, to learn a trade. Here we must be very careful not to attain the education to serve the public master, but to harness it, not only for our own good, but for the good of the general public too. Public education is used to attempt to help people fill their needs, but in doing so must want to a fast fix and do not attempt to figure out what the real roots of the problems are. This is why the legal and medical fields are so volatile and keeps individuals from searching for the truth and actually true healing. In Matthew chapter 23 and Luke 11, it states that people in these fields will be held accountable from Abel to Zechariah or from A to Z. A lot of well-meaning people don't understand the private to public concept and encourage individuals to get a good education. Maybe we need to really get a good education on the private versus public accountability, and this can only be done by private study and experience. A public education looks good on paper, but it's the after results that may get you and hold you accountable, as in debt for the rest of your lives from the public liability. So what he's talking about here simply is that most people today, for the last probably 40 years, many people in the past, like I was given the opportunity to go either by my parents paying for my education or I paying for it, or you get a free pass by simply you had great grades in school, so you get a some type of way of they pay for certain things. You know, you get a I don't know what to call it. It's not a trust, but it's a I can't think of it right now. But you've got merits in school, that is in high school, and you're seen as a good student and a reliable person, as in the debt for the rest of your life for the public life. The word republic, the word R-E-public. Okay, what does it mean to republic or have a republican form of government? The republic is referred to in the scriptures as heaven, or where the private held commercial stock is held by the agents. It states in the scriptures that only you, the agent, or your agent, that is the angel, nowhere in the scriptures does it state that you are going to be in heaven. All references are to angels/agents in heaven. This is based upon Matthew chapter 18, verses 10. This is Mark 12, verses 25. A government agent who by oath/bond must do your private commercial business as requested in writing. The spoken word is only hearsay, and as Christ said on the cross, it is finished. That is hearsay, based upon John 19, verses 30. We have to keep in mind that the government has only one function, and that is to regulate the commercial transactions, that is business between people and states. In light of the U.S. bankruptcy, aka national emergency that took place on March 9, 1933. It would be interesting that someone would understood astrology would choose to look at that particular date, March 9, 1933. There's a particular movie I would like you guys to look at. I've actually posted it today. It's called simply Jura, In the Shadow of Hermes by Juri, J-U-R-I, I think that's how you pronounce it, Lina, L-I-N-A. It was done back in 2009, and it's about a 2-hour deal. But you need to understand what it's talking about here and what has happened in the past. And so I just thought I'd just share that with you, just to let you know that, because it's critical. I posted it. Facebook doesn't seem to want to share the title of it. It really irritates me. They don't want you to have the truth, folks. Okay, back to Republic. The only way that the government has to measure these effects is by the commercial paper passed between the individuals, which are valued by the tax value on the paper transaction. In order after the order of Melchizedek, / Hebrews, for those to be tax due, there must be a tax filing or registration, as they are one and the same. This is how people get themselves somewhat in trouble. In order for the registration to take place, it must be ordered by an individual, which after registration, the immoral criminal usage is hereby diffused, and the funds have been republic. In the above reference to registration by an individual, the question could be asked why the government agency doesn't just register the commerce transaction. Then the funds would be diffused/redeemed, right? This would be Beelzebub, casting out Beelzebub, Matthew chapter 12, verses 24. Or to put it into plain words, you cannot use a negative, a minus symbol, to reduce a negative. The relationship with the government is a negative. It's an infidel-debitor. This leaves only one who can be the other side of the bond, and that would be the sovereign secure party creditor, who can be the only one to order the registration of the funds. This is chapter of Luke, verses 1 through 51. Note, only a plus sign can erase a minus sign, i.e. your private credit can wipe out debt. To republic would also be to revenue. So what he's saying simply is that we would have a ledger. If those of you do the accounting field, there's a side of the ledger that is the debts, and then the other side is the credit. Similar to your when you look at your checkbook, there's a side somewhat when you look at it. When you pay bills, you take debts off of the credit you have in the bank. So what he's trying to say simply is we've forgotten, we have, to use the Treasury Department in order to get back our positives, our benefits. We are the beneficiaries, folks. We are the beneficiaries, not the debtors. Okay? You need to get that through your head, because if you don't see this. So when you have a bill that comes to you, they are as supposed to be, but they don't tell you this. They're the trustees for your trust. So they're telling you, with this whole idea, that this is a debt and we're already going to discharge it. But they fooled us in saying it's a bill, when in reality it's not a bill. You see? See, you're the beneficiary and you're the executor of your trust. You'll notice this when the bill comes. It's not in a negative tone. I mean, it's not minus $140. It's $140 taken out. You see? So again, look at the accounting part of it, the ledger. One part is going to be debts, and one part's going to be credit. They have deceived you. Most people who do this, they have no idea because they work for a job, so they don't understand. So you mail back something, okay, it's accepted, such and such. This is the whole idea of the certificate of the bill that's sent to you. You follow? Because they're notifying you this, but you must enforce what you know. And unless you know this, you continue to pay these bills. That's what this is all about, why I'm reading this stuff to you, to make you aware that you are the creditor. And again, I want to point out simply, it's with a credit card. Why would they give you credit? Because credit is coming from your trust. That's where it's coming from. It is in your all caps name, your fiction self. But it is your trust. It is your money. But they deceive you with the word bill, and you've been programmed to pay that bill. And if you don't pay that bill, you get in trouble, you see. Think about this hardly, okay? We'll continue on. And that's why in the scripture it says, how can Beelzebub cast out Beelzebub? It's a negative. It doesn't work. That's in Matthew 12:24. You can't negativize something and put another negative. In other words, it's just like it's a bill, it's a negative number. You have to put a credit to it. But in reality, simply is they're sending you a bill that actually doesn't have a negative in front of it, but actually has a positive deal. And what they're doing simply is they're saying, this is what we've taken out of your particular account. But you don't know that. You haven't been told that. They don't teach you that. Neither your parents. Your parents didn't know it neither. Let's continue on with oath versus license. Study the similarities and differences between taking the oath versus purchasing a license and how they are viewed in the public liability. An oath is our acceptance of a public offer to serve the public by discharge of our duty and obligations, either by discharge, doing, that is, or by dishonor, that is, failure or refusal. We have bound our subconscious to act upon true national agreements that have been accepted and charged. That is, accepted is charged, in brackets, by an individual. Failure of the individual to honor his oath, who has bound his consciousness to an act of uphold the law of nature, brackets, such as the promise to pay to correct the damages by the wrongdoing, creates dishonor. This action only takes place under moral undertakings and with no malice involved. A license carries about the same convictions, but the public is selling the right of its liability, thereby limiting the account, that is the field, to those who are regulated to duties requested under their limited obligation to perform. The study of the immorality of public license can be found in Acts chapter 8 and also in chapter 22, verses 28. So licenses are necessary as the different public responsibility carries a very narrow path / act. Only those trained in that narrow path / act know the proper conditions or proper connection. This goes back to public education, which most people believe broadens your knowledge, but is only knowledge based upon a narrow point or subject. In order to control the application of this narrow view, it must be licensed so as to protect the innocent from its misapplication, which is considered malice or immorality, taking advantage of the innocent. So once we purchase, that is, accept the license, we then become the accountable in the same manner as a oath. When the individual holding the license is requested to act upon his duties and obligations, and he or she refuses or fails or dishonests, he or she then has accepted the commercial dishonor that goes with his or her actions and is charged accordingly. Sometimes they'll say, we discharge your debt, but we've charged you a certain amount of money. So, G, like a driver's license, for example, you accepted the license and you became bond to the motor vehicle code and accountable to the state. So this is how you put yourself in bondage. So you sign this thing. We've all done this, so nobody's above board here. Okay, it's not this whole idea. We all make these mistakes. It's time to learn. But when you speed and when the cop pulls you over, you pay the fine. You see, because you become bond to that motor vehicle code. And you'll also notice when you have to pay a tax on your motor vehicle, interesting word, not automobile, motor vehicle, okay? When you pay a tax on it, you see, you also put yourself in that particular deal. And you also have a licensed driver, you see. So you're a licensed driver, so you've been what you call a OK symbol goes by that, type of thing. You OK as being driver's license, but you wasn't forced to do that, were you? You volunteered, just like all of us. You see. And then you took on another responsibility, and that responsibility was simply to, right, pay taxes on the car, have insurance on that car. Again, it's all of us are in the same boat, so we must learn from this. Okay? Money creation and banks. Some individual with their endorsements, that is their signatures, creates all money. That's why you're the creditor, folks. That's why you are the creditor. If your signature is so important, this is what they're saying, you create money out of thin air. You follow? When it is created in a public form / formula, it carries a public liability, which must be taxed to the government. When an individual signs a note at the bank, this creates the funds that he or she is borrowing. One of the problems, and this is not in the chat, this is not in the book here. So one of the problems simply is that, there's nothing wrong with, like, I borrow something from Bob over here, and Bob, I need $20, so he gives me $20. But here's the key. He doesn't charge me interest. See, this is what is a problem here. Because I could pay George, whatever I just said, I pay him back the $20. He doesn't ask for any interest. But if I go to a financial place or a bank or whatever, I'm told that I must pay interest. Do you know that that was not done thousands of years ago? Do you realize that? So when an individual signs a note to the bank, this creates the funds. So he is the credit. He is the credit for that bank. Don't misunderstand that. That's what he is, and that he or she is borrowing from her account, not from the bank. And that's my words. Even the wages or funds that a person accepts from working or selling products that they grew or made are public funds that have been borrowed in existence by someone else. The Federal Reserve Act allowed the banking system to set up the way that a person could redeem these funds that they are handling. Again, the Federal Reserve Act has two sides. The public, which is the Federal Reserve Bank, uses in the public forum, in which most people are familiar with, and the private side, which only those who hold the preferred stocks of the United States are going to be able to use. Whenever a Federal Reserve Bank buys U.S. bonds or bills or notes, it must issue a negotiable instrument, that is a draft, for the purchase of the public offerings. You see, write out something, you exchange it, and you get something back. Okay? This instrument requires some individual signature, but it must circulate back to the bank where it is placed on the ledger as a collateral, to be held as a collateral for the original issue. These funds were created by a public acceptance, and therefore they carry a public liability, and they must be taxed as they pass through the system. When a non-negotiable instrument, that is a draft, is received by a bank, it is placed upon the bank's ledger as a collateral for the bank, and the bank charges the account of the principal who endorsed the instrument. These funds were created by a private tax exemption and are non-negotiable, which means they do not carry a public liability that must be taxed. Non-negotiable funds can only come from the individual, that is the secure party creditor sovereign, who accepts a criminal charge, and thereby is a holder of the priority tax exemption to pass the charge through. Continue. I see what I'm at here. I don't want to go too long. Actually, I'm over an hour here, so I probably need to stop. So we'll just stop at this particular thing. I didn't realize I'd gone through this much. And this is, again, from Redemption 4.5. We will start next time in our mirrored image. So you need to understand these things in order for you to have a good grounding, to have a foundation, to understand what is going on and how you had been fooled in this. And none of us are taught this in school because it keeps people in bondage, you see. So I appreciate you listening. We'll probably try to do another one tonight since I have some energy. Since it's the 25th, so it's a good day to do these things. Trying to stay warm here in South Carolina. I'm going to be cold again. I guess let me look at this real quick. I think it's going to get down to probably 18 degrees again tonight. Wow. So it did get above 30. It got up to about, looks like 40 degrees today, which is not great, but we'll take that over yesterday, believe me. But the winds are still here. So have a great day. Take care. Thank you for listening.